Today I'm coming to you from a dimly lit hotel room because I finally have more details on the new Kia EV9. Now stay tuned for even more because I will be seeing the North American version in person very soon. But let's talk about what Kia has released today. This is a brand new segment for America, an affordable, large, three-row EV that will seat either 6 or 7. Up until now, you could get a tiny third row in a Tesla Model Y. It's not going to be the most comfortable third row. Let's be honest, it's actually pretty uncomfortable, but it does exist. Or you could get a much more expensive Model X, or you could get a much more expensive Rivian R1S. But this EV9 is right in the thick of things. It's going to be about the same size as Kia's successful Telluride, also pretty similar to a Ford Explorer. Now, Kia has not released any details on pricing, especially North American pricing, but you can bet this is going to be significantly less expensive than the Tesla, the Rivian, or the upcoming Volvo EX90, which I kept comparing in my head when I was looking at all these photos and specifications because it is so similarly sized. Let's talk about the dimensions first. In terms of length, width, and yes, even height, as far as roof height goes, this is almost exactly the same size as a Kia Telluride. And that really surprised me because when I first saw some of the photos of the new EV9, I thought it was going to be quite a bit smaller. The pictures, very much like with the Ioniq 5, kind of distract from the size of this. It actually kind of looks a little smaller in photos than it's going to be in person. So again, 197 inches long, longer than a Toyota Highlander, 78 inches approximately wide, so about the same width as a Toyota Highlander or a Telluride, 69 inches high. Now the new EX90 from Volvo is going to be ever so slightly longer and ever so slightly wider, but a little bit shorter in roofline. However, almost exactly the same size in pretty much every dimension. Kia has been deliberately cagey on some of the EV9 details. We don't know exactly how long the hood is and what the legroom figures or headroom figures are inside, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up being roomier than the Telluride because of the EV platform and some of the space efficiencies that we see there. It also appears that we're going to get a slightly larger front trunk than we've seen in any EV from Kia, from Hyundai, or from Genesis up until this point. Now let's talk about the design. It definitely is a bit polarizing. Let me know what you think about this down there in the comments section. We have some pictures of the International Market EV9 and the International Market EV9 GT line, which is really a long name, but I'll go with that for the moment. The regular EV9 is going to get a pretty simple front end, very clean. It sort of looks like a blown-up three-row Niro. The grown-up Niro styling continues out back, where we find more expressive lights than we find in the Niro, but a general shape and profile and style out back that's a little bit more Niro than it is electric Telluride. What's also interesting is that it's not a scaled-up EV6, so it's certainly not a jelly bean-like EV like you find in the Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV, for instance. Now, if you get the GT line, which is the blue one in the photo right now, then you'll notice we get some what look like accents on the front bumper module there. Those are actually LEDs, and it appears that the design can be updated and changed. We'll know a little bit more when the vehicle goes on sale. Let me know what you think. Do you like the regular or the EV6 GT line front end? I actually think those LEDs are kind of cool. I wonder if they'll look gimmicky in person, but I'm willing to give it a whirl. The other interesting thing about the front end design is that if we zoom in really close, you'll notice we have two interesting little rectangular modules just above the license plate. Those are going to be LiDAR sensors. This is going to be one of the first vehicles on sale in North America with LiDAR from the factory. Interestingly, this may actually beat the Volvo EX90 to the LiDAR game, and I have to say Kia's done a better job integrating the LiDAR into the design than Volvo. Now, there are some pros and cons here. These LiDAR sensors are probably going to be expensive, and they're in the front of the vehicle. So in a front-end collision, they're more likely to get damaged than what we find on the EX90, which is that beluga whale-like bump just above the windshield. But this is definitely a more interesting, more attractive design. View of the road also is not going to be quite as good. That definitely gives you a very top-down look at traffic all around you with the Volvo LiDAR setup. This is going to be a bit more focused on enabling level 3 autonomy, which is what Kia says the EV9 will get in select markets. Air quotes important there. In the US, we would generally call this level 2 plus. It appears that on limited access highway, it's going to do hands-free steering, hands-free lane changing, keep itself behind the car in front of you, all that sort of thing. So basically radar adaptive cruise control with the advanced lane centering and lane keeping functionality that would let you be completely hands-free. Now, the reason they're calling it level 3 autonomy in some markets is that some places you'll actually be able to watch your infotainment screen, watch a movie on the infotainment screen while the vehicle is driving itself down the road. I'm really intrigued to see which markets get that feature. I don't think that's going to be the United States right up front. Expect the functionality here to be more like Cadillac Super Cruise. Now keep in mind we are talking about a global vehicle at the moment. We don't have all the North American details. Some of those are coming soon, so a lot of what we're talking about is what we're going to find in South Korea, in Europe, etc. And the United States is likely going to get some set of these features. Which brings us along to the motor and battery lineup. The EV9 is going to come in 3 different power levels initially. There is going to be a standard range battery pack, and the battery is a little smaller than I had expected. It's a 76.1 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery pack. I would not be surprised if this ended up getting adjusted for North America, maybe a slightly larger battery pack, but at least in its home market, this is going to be accompanied by a 201 horsepower electric motor on the rear axle, 258 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 62 miles an hour, so 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 9.4 seconds. Not exactly speedy. That particular model is going to probably have one of the lower range figures in the lineup, although we don't have any official range estimates other than some of the WLTP range estimates, which are very, very aggressive. The next up is going to be 215 horsepower, rear-wheel drive still, same 258 pound-feet of torque, but a bigger battery, which is going to allow it to go 0 to 60 faster, 8.2 seconds in that long-range model. This is the one that's going to give you the longest range, and on the WLTP cycle, 336 miles. I would assume that by the time this is translated to EPA range, it's going to be under 280 miles of range, so don't expect any over 300-mile range models from the EV9. If you get the bigger battery pack, you can also get the dual motor setup. Likely this dual motor setup is based on what we find in the Ioniq 5 and EV6, but the power output bumps up a little bit, likely because of the bigger battery pack. So 380 horsepower, 443 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, and it will tow 5,000 pounds. Now, available through the Kia Connected App Store, you'll be able to buy a boost function that will get this to go 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds. That's a pretty significant savings off of the 0 to 60 time. It's also going to support vehicle to load, future vehicle to grid functionality, over-the-air updates, all that jazz is going on. Whether or not we're going to get a faster level 2 charger, I don't know, but the 11 kilowatt one that's in the EV6 is probably going to be just fine for these battery packs. I'm really going to be interested to see how fast these batteries charge. At the moment, the G80's battery pack is the fastest charging in the line. That pack will do 240 kilowatts approximately peak. The Ioniq 5, EV6, and Ioniq 6, those all hover right around 235 kilowatts. But in some of the pre-roll footage that Kia has shown of the EV9, looking through the Easter eggs, it appears to show a 200 kilowatt charge rate at basically 100%. It says about 1 minute to charge. I have no idea whether that's real. I suspect that's just a digital image and actual charging speeds are going to be a little bit lower. But we know that Hyundai and Kia have been incredibly aggressive with charge rates on the eGMP platforms, and I suspect this is going to be the same. It may beat what we find in the EV6, but it's certainly going to at least equal what we see in that EV6. So 10 to 80% likely in under 20 minutes would be my guess at this point. Now let's get to the interior, which is definitely a departure for Kia. It looks nothing like the Telluride or the Niro. We get a steering wheel with a flat bottom and a flat top, which is kind of a sporty look there. 4 spokes there. You'll notice that they've moved the shifter to the steering column rather than the center console. Lots of buttons going on the front doors there. What look like seat heating and ventilation controls, looks like the heated steering wheel buttons over there on the doors. That's kind of an interesting touch as well. The 2-screen setup in the dash is similar to what we've seen in other Kias for a while, with an important twist. In addition to having the big over 12-inch screen on one side and the big over 12-inch screen on the other side, they've jammed yet another thing in the middle. And it looks like that's not an LCD. It looks like that's an LED display cluster there. So the LED readouts for the climate control are over there, very driver-centric rather than over on the passenger side. Some of the other climate control stuff appears to be over there. That's a really interesting twist. We get what looks like kind of a page out of the Nissan Ariya's playbook with some touch controls integrated into the trim that's running right across the dashboard. Toggle switches under that. Looks like we get the USB ports for the infotainment system under that center console area. That's not my favorite area, but I'm interested to see how that goes. Looks like some storage going on there. The flat floor that you'd expect in an EV, glove box over there on the right side. Moving all the way to the back, let's take a look at the cargo area. It looks like this is going to be deeper than what we see in the Telluride, and that wouldn't surprise me because the hood can be a lot shorter with the motors up front, so they may have really squished things along to the front and then given us a longer cargo area and a longer passenger area in the back. It looks like the rear end is pretty vertical, so it looks like it's going to be pretty cargo practical, but then we have the interesting third row and second row. The first thing you'll notice is that the third row is 2 seats only. The second thing you'll notice is that the second row seats are pointed at the third row seats, and that's because, at least with the captain's chairs, in some markets, you'll be able to get swivel chairs in the second row. This could be really interesting if you have elderly people in your family, people with mobility issues, or you just want to load the child seat more easily. I am really intrigued by this feature because you can swivel the seat, load the child or the elderly person right in, and then swivel the seat forwards or backwards, however you want to arrange them in the vehicle. I am super intrigued by this feature. It looks like we're going to have the 2 seats in the back, 2 or 3 seats in the middle, and then the 2 seats up front. I am surprised that Kia did not try and make this a 8-passenger EV. That would have been incredibly novel. If you want 8 seats in an EV, you don't have too many options at the moment. The other thing that really intrigues me about this photo is I wonder if the second row seats can come out of the vehicle. You'll notice that the shoulder belt is actually attached to the seat itself. And of course we have that totally flat floor that's enabled by the native battery pack platform here. This really does appear to be this weird in-between between a crossover and a minivan, at least in the first and second row area. You'll notice that things ramp up a little bit towards the third row area because the electric motor, things like that, are under that area of the vehicle. Now is the time to sound off in the comment section, especially if you want me to take a closer look at something when I get to see the EV9 in person in New York next week. If you're going to the New York Auto Show, the EV9 should be there on display, although you probably won't be able to get inside it. So if you have any burning questions about a closer look at something or how something might work in the US, stay tuned because hopefully we'll get more details next week. We also may get range estimates for North America at some point in time next week. I really hope we get those. But at this point in time, we at least have a good idea of the direction that Kia is going. I was really worried that the battery pack would be a little on the small side. Turns out, actually shouldn't be worried. It's about 100 kilowatt hours, so pretty similar to what we're going to find in the EX90 and some of those other much more expensive EVs out there. But this is not going to be a 400-mile affordable EV. If that's what you're looking for, you're going to need to keep waiting. Also, again, big disclaimer, we've been talking about the global EV9. Obviously, there are going to be some things that won't come to the US, so that really low, slippery 0.28 coefficient of drag is not going to be what we're going to see on our model, because that's going to require the digital side view mirrors, which are not legal in the US at this point in time. Some of the interior shots do show those digital side view mirrors. That's not going to happen here. We're going to get a more traditional layout with actual side view mirrors in North America. Let me know what you think about all that, and of course, stay tuned. I'll see all of you later.